Welcome back, everybody. It's our second installment of Frankly Saturdays, following up from last week's discussion on transfer targets and links. Here this week to talk about a little bit more of the concrete links we're seeing and players that look likely to arrive, and also talk about some outgoings. And then we may get on to talking to a little bit about the players that are brought into the USA preseason tour. All right, so Helgi, if you want to go ahead and get us started with the first player to talk about, go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, nice to be back here again. Sorry to everyone for some issues I have with my lightning, but it's a sudden problem that I'll try to fix for the next show. Now, before moving to concrete names, because it's the more or less middle of July, and I have a direct question for you. First and foremost, I will give my opinion after I hear yours and also people's in the chat. And the question is very direct: is it the moment to press the panic button regarding our transfer activity, or we should wait a little longer? Should consider the fact that the club is trying to make moves in the background, and everything that has happened during the past 2 weeks, or also these few days you saw Todd Boehly in Barcelona and things like that. So I'm very curious to know your opinion on the matter. So what do you think? Is it the moment? Yes, no, and then the explanation.
Yeah, so as far as the fact that we haven't gotten anybody officially through the doors with a signing yet is not terribly concerning for me. If you look really throughout our history, even in the last 10 years or so, there's quite a big trend that we don't get our business done early in the transfer window. We tend to wait a little bit longer. So this only being July 9th, I'm not terribly concerned. I just am a little, I mean, I have reservations with some of the targets we've talked about. As far as, we've seen Ake. I think the price that you're seeing thrown around is pretty expensive for him. Kounde is getting really to be an expensive option for us. It's looking like, and I have some reservations with him. And I mean, I think I maybe have a little bit of panic in the sense of who we're linked with, and some of the deals, like the Raphinha deal, is just, I mean, overall incredibly strange how Leeds want to sell to us because it's the best offer, but the player wants to go to Barca, and he's been kind of saying as much and behind the scenes doing as much for a few months now. But he can't go there because they can't match us. I don't really know what's going on with that deal, but if we can get Sterling over the line here soon, get a defender in as well, and then maybe start addressing a few other areas that we're linked with. I'm not. I think that's fine. I'm not ready to press any panic buttons yet. I think if we get through the end of our preseason tour and there are no signings through the door, then I'm going to be much more concerned because, I mean, the subtlety to all of this is the less time the player gets in preseason, the longer it's probably going to take them to adapt to the new team and the new system. So the longer we go without signings, we just continue to hurt ourselves more than anything. But I'm not ready to get worried about that too much yet. What are your thoughts on that? Are you a little more panicked than I am on this?
No, I think it's exactly the same stance because at the beginning of the week I said that we need to have developments and crucial developments before the squad sets off for America. And we actually got the crucial development regarding the confirmation of personal terms being agreed with Raheem Sterling.
Yeah.
And practically he's a 99% done signing, and that 1% is just the formality, the unveiling process, signing the contract, which shouldn't be a problem. So although officially we haven't signed anyone, practically Sterling is in the bag. And also there have been with updates from yesterday in consideration has been a kind of progress regarding Natanake's deal with Man City, and we seem to have agreed personal terms with him as well. So the fact that there is movement behind the scenes, and this is a fact, you can't ignore that, makes me feel hopeful, and makes me say, as you, so to agree with you when you say that it's not the time to press the panic button. And on top of that, I hate something that I'm seeing from a lot of fans in my uh, Twitter, so kind of timeline, when they say that we miss the former board, or they try to be reactive, in my opinion, in a way that it's not excusable, because people seem to forget too easily the fact that we were too slow in the transfer market, many even in the previous windows, when a structure was in place and the club weren't in this kind of transitional period. So we this time last year we had signed only Marcus Bettinelli, which was practically a third choice keeper, and didn't have any concrete development on any other profile. There were only rumors regarding us trying to negotiate the price down for Erling Haaland, but very repetitive stuff that ultimately led to nothing in that regard. And we moved to Romelu Lukaku. So I think it's not something that we are going from a board who was very fast and seemingly ambitious to tie deals up as early as June, and now we are going to a board who is slow. So this kind of narrative don't really make sense, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And the fact is that we are seeing movement. Whether we like the targets that have been mentioned or not, it's another discussion. But my question was specifically on the intent and the decisiveness, the ambition that this current board is showing. It's not the time, I think, to say to give a definitive answer, but still we can create an idea that they are trying and they are doing their bit to bringing people in, and hopefully signings will happen soon, and we will materialize stuff in order for the fan base to calm a bit down and to get things right on track again. But as you said, even for me, it's not the moment to press the panic button. I would be worried if we came back from America with the same squad that we have set off, which I don't think would be the case. So as it stands, it's not the panic button yet. I understand the worries of people because they see the activity of the top six teams, that they have made significant activity, but it's not a novelty as well, because either because Arsenal, for example, spent a lot last summer as well. Tottenham have their hands tied up due to Conte's profile of being a sort of big fish in a small pond, and he has the luxury to put pressure on them to make deals done. So that's the thing. So I think that it's a case of trying to be a bit more passionate. Hopefully we'll get news from today about Sterling and things being, and other profiles being close to joining. So that's my point on this. Reading some of the comments, Reece James is our only right back. Thank God Madsen and Kennedy are there to call. Madsen hasn't joined with the group in America, so I don't think he will be really considered. Kennedy isn't Chelsea level, with all due respect. It's not the even the moment now. He has been 5 years or 7 years since he joined from Fluminense, so
Mhm.
it's not the moment to dwell on him. Um,
And I
someone,
think with with us being like what with the point that he's making there with Reese being our only right back or right wing back option at the moment, assuming that Azpilicueta is going to be gone. I think that that's maybe the one reason why I would be a little more excited by the Jules Kounde signing is because he's somebody that could go play, in a right wing back or a right center back position, that would be able to better cover that. And we could also then move Reese into right center back for some matches if that's more of the tactical setup that Tuchel is going for. Because if we lose Azpilicueta, we're going to functionally be down to no replacements really on the right side for Reese, whether it's wing back or full back, depending upon whichever system we do end up going with for the upcoming season. But additionally, if we lose Azpilicueta, we're going to be down to Sar, Colwell, Silva, and who else? Like Chalaba. I mean, those would be our four center backs, if I'm not mistaken. If there's anybody else that I'm forgetting, I can't remember them. But we just would be lacking so much center back depth in that case that's why I think we'd absolutely need somebody in the door. And then if we get somebody that's more of that dual, kind of threat player that can be shuffled around the back line and not just in one part of the center back equation, can go over and play a bit of a fullback and drift forward more like Azpilicueta used to do. I think then that's what gives me a little more hope and a little more excitement from just a tactical fit as well as a numbers game. If we were to sign Jules Kounde, I have a lot of other reservations with him, but I think that if we're looking for a replacement on that right side, if Azpi's gone and we need somebody to help back up Reese, Kounde is somebody who could do that job. Dependent upon if he's going to be needed in the central or center of defense before he'll be needed in the on the flanks. But that's just a little caveat I would say there. I know we don't have the depth, but maybe that's why we're pursuing him as kind of a priority signing, is because he could do more than just play center back.
yeah, and the same can apply for Natanake on the left as well. It's kind of a
Exactly.
security. So, but we will come to that when we discuss the profile specifically. Now, okay, so practically we totally agree regarding the fact that it's yet to come. So this kind of pressing the panic button process of trying to feel let's say disappointed in a definitive way regarding our transfer lack of transfer activity in a formal sense, but practically we are doing things behind the scenes, so we hope that stuff will materialize very soon. Now, regarding where the heck is Emerson? I think now it's the same with Kennedy. With all due respect, I don't want to dwell on the names that have come here and haven't really made the cut. Now it's trying to just sort of clutch over the straws. I think with this kind of profiles, I feel that they themselves come back in this time of the year just to respect their contractual obligations, and they will leave as soon as possible due to pursuing more minutes and more and career choices that will guarantee them so more game time. And we can't also ignore that Emerson, by some Lyon fans that I have come across, hasn't been as good as we may have thought him to be there. So when you don't make the cut in a less intense league like French league, how do you expect to come back at Chelsea and become possibly a backup to Chilwell? So for me, it's not the option. Great to see the new show. Thanks a lot for the support, Mikhail. Now coming to the specific names, and of course the first name we have to talk about is Raheem Sterling, due to him being 99% the first signing of Todd Ball and Clear Lake era. We talked about him this time last week in depth regarding our doubts, the pros and cons of getting him here, the friendships he has with the English players at the club, the fact that they seem very kind of uplift with the news that he is coming, and also the fact that he um, provides some kind of upgrade on our current attacking personnel. Although I stated my opinion that it's not the biggest deal because our current attacking options are too underwhelming. They score less than 8 or 9 goals per year, so it's terribly disappointing. And we have also the doubts regarding the fact that he doesn't have the current personnel around him. So how will he cope without a Kevin De Bruyne kind of player, or from his past, Leroy Sané? Because I watched many goals of him at City, and he was fulfilled by Sané's assist more often than not. And we don't have actually a kind of player that can be as good at supplying as he was. So now, when 99% done, we have to accept the reality and look at the positives. So my question, first and foremost, is different from last week. We're trying to analyze the profile. Now we are trying to consider him, but practically a Chelsea player. And I wanted to ask you about where do you actually see him in the system, because there are many suggestions that Tuchel may change his shape, or even in the current shape he may play Sterling as a 9 rather than as a left winger as he played at City. So somebody who can provide a kind of versatility along with Havertz to play at the top and interchange with the inverted forwards behind him. So what do you think in this regard, and do you have any kind of revised opinion on him to the one that you expressed last week?
I mean, as far as that goes with Sterling, I don't think I see him playing kind of this, in this number 9 position or something like that, or false 9. I don't see him doing that. That's never really been his game. He's never been somebody that's played as a central player. He's always been played out more, towards the wings and the touch lines. And I think that's where, just from my own eye test over the years, that's where he's best. One caveat that I think here with Sterling is, he has undeniable talent. If we really want to be objective about it, what he's achieved in his career is greater than any of the wingers that we currently have to play on those outside roles of our, lone striker or main guy up front in the center of the pitch. I mean, quite frankly, he's a more accomplished player with a much better career, with a lot more on his CV than any of our other attackers. And I think that, we have the Champions League win with some of our attackers, but the bottom line is that Champions League was not born out of a whole lot of our attacking play. It was much more, in my opinion, born out of our defensive structure and our ability to control in the midfield and win the ball back very quickly, and then basically just possess the ball until the other team is frustrated and beat on that way. But again, I think that Sterling, he's played for Liverpool, played for Man City, played for Chelsea. He's done nothing but play for huge clubs his entire career. Those are the 3 biggest clubs over the last, 7 years of English football. Maybe more if you want to go back a little further. So I just have to think with Sterling, yeah, I have my reservations, but I think that we probably will find a way to incorporate him. And I think we will, whether that's a tactical change in the way in which we try to, as a system, create chances that will get Sterling involved more, or whether we keep the same system and then sign, as we've been linked with Raphinha, to put him on that right side to be more of that chance creator, or somebody else, because it does look like Hakeem Ziyech is leaving, so that takes away our chance creator that we do have in the squad, that takes that main guy away, that has the best efficiency at creating chances, not necessarily the most volume, but he's the most efficient chance creator we had. You see the comment there from Mikhail. Someone said it right. What Tuchel's doing, leaving on tour with a bunch of players about to leave the club. What's he expecting you to learn? But it is what it is. It is. We do have a lot of players that are going to leave. We're not taking all the players we expected, and Sterling may or may not at this point be one of the players that gets to join us, and that is detrimental. I think that we need to give him more time with the squad, and we need to let Tuchel have the most time he can to work with Sterling prior to the season, because there's no way we're going to sign Raheem Sterling and not immediately put him a nailed-on starter on the left. At least for me. I mean, do you think that do you think there's any chance that Sterling is going to be signed and not immediately go right into the starting lineup most matches?
Now the thing is that it's not only about Sterling and how we incorporate him in this kind of as soon as possible, because he's coming from a sophisticated system there, and of course he may need his time to really click. But what I think that it's right, it's a profile of player that we are targeting. So
yeah,
we have needed somebody that can provide versatility, and not somebody to play specifically as a 9. So like somebody, he's a kind of antidote to what Lukaku represented, but just as a profile. So to express myself, basically, I feel that the profile of players in general, not just in terms, because that's why I said it's not just about Sterling, but Sterling, Raphinha, maybe even Dembele going that far. So players, attacking players that can provide direct contributions at their best, is the way we should have thought, and we should have opted to chase, since so from last year summer, just after we won the Champions League, because the past precedents of Thomas Tuchel's choices at his previous clubs consists of building an attack that relies on interchangeable players who don't have an exact point of reference, but have people out there who can switch to different positions in those last 20 meters. So players that can play behind the player who is high up the pitch, or who can drift wide, who can take people on, and somewhat kind of embody that principle of universality that modern football really requires. And Lukaku didn't do that. Sterling may very well do, if he is incorporated well, and if he adjusts with the current system. But as a profile, I like the way, first and foremost, that we are thinking of trying to target wide players who can provide goals and assists, rather than number 9s that are static and want to be fulfilled and supplied with crosses or passes from the other man behind in order to thrive, because otherwise they may feel isolated like Lukaku did.
Yeah,
and this is what I like. But the thing is that Sterling is specifically, I have my reservations, as you said, and this is something that I won't deny now, just because he's signing for us. I really do hope that he proves me wrong. I'm not one of those people who want to die on their heel in order to defend an opinion that consists of trying to see a signing fail just to prove their point. That's not the case, because you aren't a real fan in this way. I want him to prove me wrong, but I won't say now that, okay, he's coming, so I forget all the things that I feel that as doubts, as misgivings, and will focus only on the positives. So that's the thing. I'm balanced in my take, but I hope that he will thrive, and Tuchel has really started the signing of him. So that's more or less like last week for me, and I hope that he becomes a success for us. Big up everyone. Thanks a lot. If you haven't, please like and subscribe to the channel in order to get notified whenever we or even the other streams of the channel are ready to be transmitted. So thanks a lot for the support. True Blue says Sterling is on holiday. He'll have his medical, then travel to the US. You take all players to develop fitness and have full-size training matches. Yeah, that's the point, but I don't know the reason behind the comment. If it has to do with unveiling, I get it, but we have to get the news about the agreement between the clubs, because this doesn't have anything to do with Sterling being in Jamaica, and we haven't got the news or confirmation between a deal between the club, so among the clubs regarding a final fee on Sterling yet, and this is what we are waiting for. While unveiling is another thing. Now, the other name that we have talked about even last week, but which has been which is turning into a saga, is Raphinha. And we are hearing many contradictory rumors about him, about the fact that he first and foremost wanted to join Barcelona, and then you could even have sources to say that he was ready to wait for Barcelona and would rather stay at Leeds than move somewhere else, which would block his dream of moving to the Spanish club. And now the situation has seemingly changed. I just came across a report from Goal Brazil, which said that Deco and Raphinha have put Barcelona a deadline that they should find the financial capability to come to an agreement with Leeds for a similar amount that we have already had in the next 24 to 48 hours. Otherwise, he will resume the negotiations with us to agree personal terms and maybe a kind of to move away from his dream due to the current circumstances. Now, for me, the situation is so difficult to predict due to Barcelona's way of operating, which is confusing more or less everyone in the fan base because of the fact that they still persist on signing players, renewing with Dembele, which is a complicated thing in itself, and still trying to do all this inside the territory of financial implications they have. And this is what baffles me the most. And how do they convince the players to keep waiting when everyone is seeing that they are in a very difficult and complicated state of dealing with their debts? So for me, it's a case of trying to I have always defended my argument of giving him a deadline, because you can't wait infinitely, and Barcelona have nothing to lose but to wait, because wait is in their favor. It means that the player is ready to keep his cool and delay a possible decision. But for us, it's not the case, because we already have the agreement with Leeds.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I would get him in the sense that he could treat us as another kind of choice in this scenario of not going to Barcelona. But at the same time, without trying to be idealistic, I know that it wouldn't go well enough with all parts of the fan base, because they will treat his decision as somebody who is trying us merely as a backup choice, and that's the issue. So how do you think, and do you have a kind of another perspective on Raphinha's situation, and how do you see his possible switch to us now, because the tides are turning in a very frenetic manner and we don't know what to believe? But how would you anticipate a possible signing for us, of him for us, in order to, is him betraying his dream and coming to us?
So, I mean, I quite honestly, I'm just over the Raphinha situation. I mean, it's been reported now for over a week that we've agreed to terms with Leeds for a deal, and we've offered the same reported contract in terms of wages that Barcelona are willing to offer. So, all things considered, Chelsea were the first one to have the offer Leeds want, and they offered an offer the player would have accepted elsewhere. So there's really nothing with what Chelsea have done that, quite frankly, necessitates this long, drawn-out process. It's quite simple. Barcelona, you either match what Chelsea have, because that's what Leeds have said. They're going to sell to the best offer for them. And, they're not going to accept Barca's offer if they continually bid below what Chelsea has already had accepted. The player really wants Barca, and that's why I'm just kind of over this deal. Barcelona continue to I don't know how they do it. I mean, they don't have any money. They're essentially facing bankruptcy, and then they keep on just finding ways to sell their future to help the immediate problems. Which, that's a whole other topic for, business, whether they should be doing that or not. But I have to say with Raphinha, if he wants to join, he needs to get this over the line quickly, because this is way too, well, just drawn out. I don't understand as a club, if we can, how we let this continue to go on much longer, because I don't think that it's smart to basically have a player that, you're ready to sign, but he just won't sign. Because I think it shows right there that he views Chelsea as this plan B. If my plan A doesn't work, I can either go to Chelsea, or Raphinha can stay at Leeds for 6 to 12 more months and then move to Barcelona if that's what he truly wants. And just I know sometimes it's overstated in terms of how much people love the club or those kinds of things. I think it's very overstated most of the time, because the unfortunate truth is a lot of these players, they're going to go where the money goes. It's their career, right? And just as me or you or whoever in our own careers are going to look for offers that benefit us the most, for what we're looking for, and footballers are no different in that regard. So I don't fault Raphinha for wanting to make his own move, but I do fault him in the sense that if he doesn't want to sign for Chelsea, please let the club know that, so we can move on to other targets. And that's why I say that I'm kind of over the Raphinha deal in general. He's a good player. He would work for us. If he does end up signing, great. I'm fine with that. But just my overall excitement and care for the move has declined. And if he's not going to be through the door here soon and official with Chelsea, and he is dead set on Barcelona now or in the future, then we really need to know that immediately, so we can start shifting our focus at other targets that make a lot more sense for us, instead of wasting more time and potential money on Raphinha.
Yeah, and I have the same opinion regarding the way you treat the question whether we are his plan B or not, because I have seen some kind of contradictory opinions from the fans on Twitter. I made the poll actually some days ago, I think 2 days ago, and I think more than 100 people had voted. 76% were in favor of us getting Raphinha, despite everything that has happened. So him waiting first for Barcelona and then trying to negotiate something with us, and only 29%, 24% were against such a move. So I fall to the minority, and I don't want to be controversial, but I explained myself last week, and I want to make sure that it's a difference between having two teams that have simultaneously agreed with Leeds, that have made you two similar proposals regarding the wage and other personal stuff that the player has to take in consideration. And something completely different is when only one club has shown the intent to sign you, and the other club is making you wait and more or less putting your future in danger. Because what happens to Raphinha if we withdraw our offer due to the lack of passions, and he remains at Leeds and practically misses out on moving to a bigger club when he would have his guaranteed minutes as well. So he's more or less gambling with his own career in case we withdraw our offer. I don't expect us to do, because we have already waited enough.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that a player should be more decisive, because they have been more than 2 weeks since all this happened. All this started to be discussed, the kind of the agreement that we had with Leeds. So it's not the case. I justify, as I said, his decision if both us and Barcelona were in the same state in terms of our availability to agree with Leeds. And I would respect that from a neutral perspective, that the player has his own preferences. But it's not, we aren't in the same place with Barcelona. We can offer him more, and I'm talking in an unbiased manner, but we can offer him Champions League football in terms of stability. We can offer him more a sense of trying to play more minutes in an environment that is very competitive, and he can grow himself and can make a bigger name for himself. And also in the national team, he can also play with a higher reputation in the World Cup, like the one that he would have at Barcelona, with all due respect, but the league there has had lower standards than the Premier League. So there are many, but it's his way of trying to excuse his decision, and I'm not going through that. Every player knows what is best for his career. The issue is that he is trying to force the offer from Barcelona, and this is what I can't can translate as a kind of disrespect to our club for being as decisive as has intent to signing him. Now, moving on to another topic of discussion, which has to do with Nathan Ake, because he's actually the more or less the next name that has been more mentioned after Raheem Sterling, due to us seemingly considering resigning him back seriously due to agreeing personal terms. Fabrizio Romano and Metlo reported it yesterday that we actually have a full agreement with him on personal terms, and things edging closer also with an agreement with City, despite their asking price of being £40 million. Now, my opinion on this is I'm too confused, and I have rarely been this confused regarding my opinion on a player, despite the pros and cons. First and foremost, Nathan Ake for me doesn't represent an overwhelming signing, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat it by anything, because he is a profile that let's say doesn't really excite people due to being fourth choice at City, and actually being somebody who we had in our personnel, and we sold him, and even we had the buyback clause and didn't exercise it at the time. So it seems like a kind of desperate attempt for us to replace Rudiger for some people. But regarding the price, I don't really feel it is as exaggerated as people are trying to make it, because for me, the market today has become too self-dictating rather than being clubs trying to negotiate the price, especially in the Premier League, because it is a global brand, and more than half of the population of the world watch it week in, week out. So you can't really expect Chelsea and Manchester City dealing for a player for less than 30 or 40 million pounds in today's market. It's something that can be practically impossible or near impossible due to the strong finances that Premier League clubs have. And also, it's regarding Ake as a profile, I feel that he can provide some kind of versatility that some other defenders wouldn't. So and what surprises you the most is that City fans don't want to let him go, don't want to see him in another Premier League club. And I mentioned it this time last week that it's not that easy for a player who plays rarely to be consistent in terms of performances, because they show those signs of being rusty more often than not due to the hiatus from one game to the other. You had in Didier Drogba's autobiography, for example, when Villas-Boas was the manager, he had a kind of routine of playing one striker in one game. So Drogba, for example, today then would play Anelka and then Torres. So this was kind of didn't give the players the kind of motivation and the encouragement they needed, because they knew that they would have to wait 2 other games in order to step up on the pitch again. So for Ake, this is admirable for him to come back and to play in a high-level performance despite playing rarely. And this is what we have to consider. And this kind of discussion between regarding his status quo at City would be forgotten if he does a job for us, because these are the things that remain in people's memory, not the process of negotiation on how was he treated at the previous club. If he does a job for us, it would be very fine. My biggest worry is us possibly funding City's possible signings with 100 million pounds for Sterling and Ake, rather than the quality of the player himself or the fact that he's being signed for 40 million pounds. Because, as I said, for me, it's principle. So, in principle, it may be a bit excessive, but practically it's not, because there are two Premier League clubs, two high-profile Premier League clubs that are dealing in 2022. So I can't position myself in a direction. So it's not a kind of yes or no for me, but it wouldn't be the worst of signing of all if I'm honest. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Ake is one of those moves where, we're going to be honestly signing him to be on the left side. There's no doubt. He could be, shuffled in a back four if we really had to. We could play him on the left back. But the biggest thing is his competition on that left side is Malang Sarr. And he's going to, if we sign him, immediately displace Sarr in that lineup. And even maybe in the squad entirely. That might drop Sarr out of the squad. But the other thing, and keep in mind that I just said, we're looking at him as a Rudiger replacement. When you look at kind of the scouting report, and you can go on FBref and look at these things, one of the similar players that's quoted for Ake is Antonio Rudiger. The other similar players that are quoted for Ake are all three of City's other center backs, right? So it's clear that we are targeting a system fit, I think, with Ake much more than we're targeting this really high upside player. I don't think Ake's ceiling is that great at the age and career stage he is. We know exactly what he is. He's going to be a stable option, but he's not going to be the best option that you could possibly have as a center back. He'll be good enough, but he won't be great. I mean, I don't want to mince words here. I think he's a fine player. He's going to be, if we do sign him, put him on that left center back spot with a back three, I think he'd be pretty good. I think he'd be a very good signing. But I don't think he's going to be, there's no, for anybody to expect him to be anything close to some of the other top center backs in the world, it's just not realistic, given where Ake is. He doesn't have 4 to 5 years left to develop into something more. This will be his last big move if he gets it. The other thing that's nice is he knows the club well, and he already has familiarity playing in a back three. And he actually is a very, tidy passer of the ball. And having that left-footed center back to play on that left side does actually make a little bit of a difference for the margins in terms of possession-based ball and building out from the back. And just to I don't want to talk about it too much, but the idea here is if you have a right-footed center back who needs to distribute the ball from the left center back spot, it's going to take more time simply because they have lesser passing angles based upon being right-footed as opposed to left-footed, and they're going to be more apt to play the ball with their right foot in some cases. Whereas Ake, being a left-footed player who will play as left center back, is just going to naturally, because of that left-footedness, have a little bit more passing angles, which will require a little less time when we're trying to build out from the back for him to read and play that ball. And these are things that even Pep Guardiola, you can find him talking about the need for, possession-based and how, what I'm talking about fits into that, building out from the back, being a possession-based team. These little margins that it would create could make a difference for us, because if you remember, Rudiger was a right-footed center back who played a left center back. So I think really that's where Ake could be a subtle signing for us. I don't think he's going to be great, but I think he could be somebody that just holds it together, provides stability. We know what we're going to get. He knows the club. He provides a left foot in our left center back position. And he plays in a possession-based system. And a lot of the similar players are players that play in those same systems, or are basically saying he is a similar guy to who we're trying to replace with Rudiger. Now, besides the footballing reasons, let's talk about the money involved here. 50 million pounds for Ake. The fact that he's going to potentially cost more than Raheem Sterling is just mind-blowing to me. I mean, look at the position. Center back is worth as much as left wing. That's just an inherent thing. Goal scorers in the market are generally going to demand the higher fees, and that's because they get the goals. I'm not saying that I agree. I'm just saying that's how the system is. But for him to cost more money has to be only a function of, Sterling being in the final year of his contract and that lessening that fee quite a lot. But the price that I think we're seeing for Ake is a bit much. And if we want to look at it if we're going to pay £50 million for Ake, couldn't we just pay £65 million and get Kounde? And then you look at Kounde and how he actually does have some similarities to Ake himself, except that he's a right-sided player as opposed to a left-sided player. So that would give us some right side cover if we went for Kounde for a little bit more as opposed to Ake, which then kind of gives up the problem. We don't have that left-footed center back then. So there is some give and take here. There is a balance. It's hard to strike. But I just think that given the fees we're seeing quoted with Ake, I'm not opposed, is what I'm saying, to just spending a little bit more money and getting Jules Kounde because he's younger. He's got a higher ceiling for his talent level. He maybe has a little bit more positional flexibility for us in terms of, and that positional flexibility can allow us to have more tactical flexibility. And maybe just small little tactical flexibility tweaks are what allow us to have more chance creation from a systematic approach than what we saw last year. And it's kind of odd to talk about a defender being the one that can make these, unlock these things, but it can. If you get somebody with more recovery pace, you can play a little bit further up the pitch because you can risk a little more knowing that you can recover more faster. These are just kind of the small things that I'm thinking about with the Ake signing versus the Kounde signing, or maybe we do both. That'd be pretty nice if we did.
That's the point I would immediately make, because they play in two different positions of the back three. So Ake is the left center back, and Kounde would practically be the right center back. And about the price, another reason why I stick to my point that put into a specific context, it's not that high as people are making it, is the fact that if we kind of focus our attention to the other center backs targets that we have, you have Matthijs de Ligt, who is expected to cost more than 80 million euros, and he has this amount of risk in itself when it comes to us possibly signing him, because we discussed last week and we said that he has been pretty underwhelming at Juve. So it's impossible to decrease the prices too much in modern game. And you said that strikers cost more than defenders, but the thing is that the inflation has become a kind of phenomenon that you can't really avoid. And Ake is a player that can be very beneficial to the system. And something that you have to bear in mind as well, and Chelsea fans in general have this kind of perception, and me included, to try to find the most suitable replacement for Rudiger. At the back of my head, I keep I have to bear in mind that Rudiger was the guy that everyone had on top of their list to offload before Thomas Tuchel's arrival. So no one knows where Thomas Tuchel can send Ake in terms of his level of development. Yes, he doesn't have the sailing nor the age of Kounde, but ideally we can sign them both because they play in two different positions of the back three. And this is one of the reasons, although I would have preferred us to prioritize the signing for Koulibaly due to his leadership nature, physicality, and stuff like that. And of course, he also has a year left in his contract, so he can be easily targetable. But between Ake and Kounde, I don't find a reason why we should make a choice. So get one and leave the other. We can get both. But specifically for Ake, I said that there are many positives. There is a number of negatives as well. But I want to focus on what Thomas Tuchel can do with him. I want to focus on the fact that Rudiger, who we regard very highly now, was somebody that everyone wanted to get rid of before Thomas Tuchel's arrival. Same with Christensen. So Tuchel has a very good record of significantly improving the defenders, and he can do that with Ake, because Ake is somebody that plays well at City, despite his lack of significant number of minutes. So I feel that this could be a deal that can go either way. So I can't really position myself in a stance, but still I get the logic behind it. It's not something totally out of the blue. Tuchel has watched him since his Dortmund days, knows the environment, and above all is somebody that can provide, as you said, the kind of profile that is needed for the system, also with the work with in terms of distribution and the work with his feet. So how he uses his left foot can be very beneficial in the build-up. Now, yeah, so there is a comment here. I'd be very happy if Chelsea signs Sterling, Raphinha, Nunez, De Jong, Koulibaly. And Nunez is at Liverpool. Sterling, Raphinha, De Jong. I don't think it's that realistic because it would cost more than 200 million. Maybe Leva is the guy to bring number 9 course and to be the Marcus Arnoldi was talking about. I'd be all for his signing, even if it is 1 + 1 year deal. I have talked with people so non-virtually, even in my country, and they come at me and say, does he really have the stamina to handle the Premier League in this age? But I think he is one of a kind in the sense that falls into a bracket that consists of him, Benzema, and Kane in terms of the universal kind of number 9s that aren't static. So I would get him, but I don't think it's realistic because he's too keen to join Barcelona.
And the other thing too is I actually have I've been saying this for more than just this year. It's been a few years of this with a lot of Chelsea fans. I get in this argument a lot about Lewandowski. And, I mean, I'll just say it. If we signed Lewandowski, he would be just as effective as Lukaku. So not what you'd want out of him. And the reason I say that is because if you look at Lewandowski's underlying numbers, his chance conversion percentage is actually under 50%. So he doesn't convert even half of his chances. So he's not clinical. The only reason he's getting all of the goals he's getting is because he plays for Bayern Munich, who, if you look at their chance creation numbers, are through the roof, right? So they just create tons of big chances, which gets him a lot of goals. And, unsurprisingly, they have Thomas Müller, who is one of the, most frequent assisters in Europe over the last 4 years. I mean, his assist numbers are off the charts the last few seasons. So my thing with Lewandowski is, and this is what I'm saying is a wider comment here. It's not really indicting Lewandowski. It's indicting the Chelsea tactical system, which is that we don't create enough chances. So my thing is, we can sign the best players. You could sign the Ronaldos, you could sign the Lewandowskis, you could sign, the Mbappes, whoever, and throw them up front for us. And they're not going to succeed in the way that we would expect, given the fees we'd have to pay for these players, because we don't create enough chances. So unless we have a tactical shift that starts relying on more chance creation and usually if you're going to have more chance creation, you need to have some form of better off-ball movement, or you need to have a better one-on-one ability to win your battles, or simply, if you're not going to win your dribbles or in battles, you need to have passing where the opponent can't get to you. And unless we get to a state where we have a more systematic approach that is focused on chance creation, or we simply keep the same system and get Sterling and a literal chance creator for that right wing position, I don't really think it matters who walks through the door to come play striker for Chelsea. And this is a wider issue that's been going on pretty much since Eden Hazard left. So I think that's what I would say. That what my caveat here with Lewandowski is, yeah, it'd be great to see what he would do, but I have a lot of reservations that looking what he does with where he's at and how that works, it doesn't translate at all to the Chelsea system. That's where I'm at with Lewandowski, but I think it's an interesting question if he would be somebody that could break our 9 curse. And I'm going to I think I'm going to say until I see more, I don't think anyone will, because there's a system that is set up to not really create as many chances.
Yeah, but of course disagree with something one moment.
Hey, it's fine. It's fine if we disagree on this one. A lot of people disagree with me on
my
that other
argument
things.
is that I have seen him as just eye test based as a versatile striker compared to the number nines that can do a very good job in counter-attacking systems. He's somebody that has done well even in a system that requires very high tempo of dictating the play. And Bayern Munich or not, he has shown kind of being a point of reference, not in the classic sense of the word, but also in a modernized way. Maybe it may not be Benzema or Kane's level of universal striker that can drop deep whenever it's possible, because he doesn't even need to, due to Bundesliga defenses being too open and allowing much space behind the lines for the attackers to exploit. But the thing is that I have liked him in the sense that can provide a sense of versatility and would be risk-free if we tie him up in a 1+1 year deal. So you don't really have anything to worry about in terms of him fulfilling the expectations or the price that we could pay for him. That's the logic behind it. So, but anyway, it's not something that we should really go through it a lot, in my opinion, due to his strong desire to join Barcelona. I don't really see him joining us.
No, I don't either. I don't see it happening.
I'm talking about Matheus Nunes, the Sporting Lisbon guy, but the rumors don't have legs, so that's why we are not getting carried away. If we're going to six players, I don't think we're going for the league. Agree to an extent. I don't really think now that we are signing the league because it's becoming sort of Alexandro kind of deal with Juventus. Bayern's intervention has given them the favor to increase the price, and I don't think that 90 million euros would be excusable for the league with all the ceiling that he may have and the leadership qualities, but it is too risky, and it's another indirect reason, as I said, that I somewhat justify the price for Ake, because if we veer and watch the other, let's say, targets that we have, you barely find a cheaper price. Let's kind of read another comment before moving on to the next topic.
We got one. Do we think that Chelsea will sign De Ligt and Ake? I don't know if we'll get. I don't know. I think De Ligt is looking a little less likely at this point. It looks like Bayern, are starting to exert their pressure here on the player, and he is starting to kind of look that way. I don't know if we're going to get De Ligt. I do think we're going to get Ake, though. The fact that we've already agreed personal terms and now we're just trying to get a fee done with City, I think we're going to get Ake.
There is at least 16 players we should think about before making deals. Kepa, Sean, Colville, Lampadu, Emerson. I don't think that would make a significant difference, because making deals is a must for us, despite the personnel, due to the departures that we have had and we may actually have during the rest of the window. We'll talk about that a bit later. So now coming to another kind of profile that has been mentioned, it's, I think, when we talk about Frenkie de Jong situation, is something that really came out of the blue, because he was destined or looked destined to join Man United in a matter of time. It seems that Barcelona's financial implications have made it difficult in terms of materializing the deal. And now Todd Boehly was in Barcelona 2 days ago to have dinner with their officials, including the president, Laporta. So the suggestions were different from the fans. Some were arguing, including me, that it's not necessary to board the plane and fly to Barcelona just to strike a deal for Alonso and Azpilicueta, because in the hectic context of modern football, they may be well considered as easy deals to be struck. So there must have been something else that needed a bit more negotiating, although the meeting lasted 1 hour. But still, you had Spanish media were reporting that Frenkie de Jong's name was discussed in that meeting. So personally, I think that you shouldn't say no to him, despite the fact that midfield reinforcements aren't our current priority. We have defensive issues to solve, both in terms of personnel and quality of the players that will bring in to fill the vacuum left by Rudiger and Christensen departures. But also our attack is too misfiring. You said even when we won the Champions League, it was more of winning it despite the misfiring attack rather than due to its contribution. So we have these key issues, but still, De Jong is a player that I have admired at that Ajax team when they reached the Champions League semi-final, barely missed out on the final in 2019. So somebody that could be a drive in their midfield. Maybe is not the most the most reliant in terms of goal scoring or assisting week in, week out, but he has similar features to Kovacic. Is resistant, can attack empty spaces, can hold possession very well, and also can provide us an option that can play in both positions, so both in front of the defense in Jorginho's place and also in midfield. So it's one of those cases that you have to strike a deal, I think, if it's possible, because the ceiling is there, and Thomas Tuchel has admired him, and I feel that he is that kind of profile that would give our midfield a kind of dimension that would add to the technicality that we already have. And also, it's one of those kind of sneaky deals that you don't really need to think much behind it, because you really exploit financial difficulty of his current club in order to make sure that you get a player that can really evolve in Thomas Tuchel's system. So for me, it's a yes. I'm not saying that we should prioritize him over other signings, but in principle, I think that he could be a signing that, like Kai Havertz one, would be the signing of somebody that would need its time to integrate, but then we could see what he could provide. Of course, the ages are a bit different. He's, I think, 3 years older, De Jong, if I'm not wrong, but still, he is at an age that he can be.
I think De Jong's 25.
So what do you think? Yeah.
I was going to say, I think De Jong's 25 years old. So he's still like kind of developing a little bit. He's not quite in that peak of his career, but
he's not at his peak.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I know a lot of people are going to clamor for us to get more of a destroyer profile to be in that DM role, and we've seen this go on and on again. But there's kind of this interesting debate between what kind of midfielder you want to be at the base. Before I break that down a little bit, just want to remind everybody, please like and subscribe. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out and helps Chelsea Perspective grow more than they already have. So thanks for everybody for tuning in. Make sure to do that. But to get into this a bit more, you have this kind of philosophical difference of how you want this midfield to be run going forward. Currently, we have the Jorginho approach, which is to have this, more controller, if you want to use very basic terms, there in the base of midfield, or you'll hear other things like regista or deep lying playmaker, whatever. Essentially, it's just a function of how you want to use that defensive midfielder, and the current system uses a defensive midfielder that is much better at passing and beating a press, as well as dictating the tempo, to also help set up, on the ball, as well as to help set up counterattacks. But the problem with what we currently have with that type of profile is that we can be very vulnerable on counterattacks. And I don't think that would change if we signed Frenkie de Jong. And I think that what we would do with de Jong is, I think right now his defensive work at Barcelona is next to nothing. He does hardly any of it. So there would need to be a big shift in how we run our midfield, because I don't think I see him being this defensive midfielder right now. That's talking about right now in 2022. I don't see him being this defensive midfielder that's going to play in this double pivot and drop deeper and have somebody else in front of him. I don't think that's the role he would occupy right now. So I think if we were to sign de Jong, it's gonna probably bring a shift in midfield to a 3. Who those 3 are, probably Kova, de Jong, somebody else. I don't know. That's not my decision to make. But that's kind of how the midfield would function. I think long-term de Jong could easily become the Jorginho replacement. And it's ironic because a lot of the things that fans right now are correctly pointing out about de Jong not having any defensive capabilities, especially when you look through the numbers. He's just not involved in defensive aspects of being a center midfielder right now. But it's funny because this is how Jorginho was also discussed around the same age, when he was still playing over in Italy. So there's a lot of similarities, and I think that if you gave a year, 2 years or so, and some integration period for de Jong to play at the base of midfield a little bit, and then still move into other roles with midfield, that we really could have a very promising, already established potential Jorginho replacement. And it also gives us more time to sign other midfielders that would best maximize de Jong's skill set down the road. Because if we're going to get a few years before he reaches his own peak, then that also gives us a few years to put more pieces around that midfield, so that when that de Jong reaches his peak, maybe we've made other signings that are all on their peak at the same time. Now, and what I was going back to with this philosophical difference is that's how I think de Jong would function. And if you want that approach, it's perfectly fine. I think given where modern football is, and given how we play in Thomas Tuchel, I think we're more suited to play a possession-based style than this counter-attacking based style. And I think that if we were to sign more of your classic destroyer, Declan Rice is what a lot of people are going to talk about here. If we were to sign more of that profile for center midfield, it's going to change the system in which we have. I don't think we're going to be as slowly possession-based as we currently are, because we're going to be able to be in transitional states of play more often with a destroyer, as opposed to a creator, or whatever terms you want to use. It's not really the terms that we'd use like in an actual coaching sense, but just for the sake of it, I think it's easiest to discuss it like that. It's gonna make a difference in that regard, and we already play without that destroyer profile. So just kind of keeping continuity, I think de Jong would make a lot of sense in that regard. And overall, I think that de Jong would be a good signing. If you get him for under 60 million, that's good business. I mean, for the talent you're getting, for what you're already you're getting out of him, and he can go even further than what he currently has in his own development. I think it's a good deal. And especially when you talk about some of these prices we've seen for like Declan Rice quoted around, I mean, there's really no interest at all reportedly from the club. It's basically that we're not paying this fee, and West Ham won't even make the call. So in that sense, that's why I think de Jong, and potentially making him this Jorginho replacement over a year or two of refining his role and his skill set for that, I think it could be a really, really important signing for us. And I would go all for it if we can. But sorry to go on so much of a tangent there.
No.
No, I think it's a really interesting discussion. And it really just comes down to, if you want de Jong, you probably want to play similarly with a DM to Jorginho. If you don't, you probably want a DM that's more in the destroyer, Declan Rice, Fernandinho type role. So it just depends. I think either or works, but we already play with the Jorginho style. So I mean, maybe for continuity, it's best to keep it. I don't know. I also have my reasons for why I want us to not keep the same continuity, which is because we don't create enough chances. But whole nother episode. I could talk about the chance creation issue for way longer than I need to. So I'll just cut up.
No. The issue is that I don't see de Jong as a potential Jorginho replacement, more than a kind of 8 profile that can really provide another kind of midfielder that has similar skill set to Kovacic. So, but the thing is, you mentioned it yourself that in the long term he can be very valuable to us, and that's the reason why I drew the parallel with Havertz signing, because there are those kind of players that don't immediately explode. You need to be a bit more patient, and then you can reap the fruit of these patience in the long term. And I feel that with him we could have this kind of luxury if he develops the way that Tuchel may have projected him, because what we already know is that Tuchel wanted him very much even at PSG. So that's a very good fact, and I think that he has had a plan how to use him and how to utilize him in their squad. Before moving on to another kind of topic which is new in for this episode, it has to do with the possible outgoings. It's some breaking news from Leeds that have confirmed that Raphinha is out of their preseason tour. Here's the news. They have officially confirmed that he is not in the team for the tour of Australia. So it's either us or Barcelona, and the suggestion that we may withdraw the offer for him now falls due to him practically being gone from Leeds. I still think, and I have that kind of doubt that he will join Barcelona due to the things getting a bit. I think getting a bit excessive now in terms of the passions and stuff that it shouldn't have been dragged so long. But who knows? Now you can't really predict anything in this kind of circumstances, and I think this is a significant update that even Leeds are resigned to losing him this summer. Now moving on to the topic of outgoings. So we have players that have departed now and were crucial in the last year's squad, that were Rudiger, Christensen. Rudiger in particular, because he played a significant number. I think, if I'm not wrong, he was the player with the majority of minutes. He was barely benched last season, so we know how influential he was in the team. And also Romelu Lukaku, which can be considered as a very positive riddance in terms of the way he didn't really show any commitment to finishing what he called from the outset is an unfinished business at us. Now he can be considered as a good riddance. But the thing is that I try to focus on the young players situation that is the topic of discussion in itself. Now the problem is this, because what I really disagree with many people that I see is that they march to blame Thomas Tuchel for not playing a specific young player in a certain game, and this is something that I don't really agree with. It started last season in the last two games that were practically dead rubbers, and I didn't really get the anger of people. Because what would Harvey Vale, for example, gain through playing against Watford in the last game of the season, where they could easily prove themselves in the preseason and when it's a time to impress the manager. But what I see now is that they are seemingly, if I'm not wrong, out of the preseason tour, which is something that has made me a bit made me reevaluate my stance. Of course, I'm not one of those people that are really fond of Cobham's products of current current year, because people forget that it's not the same generation as the past 5 years. So it's not that kind of elite bunch of youngsters who won 7 trophies out of 7 in 2 years under Jody Morris, and won the UEFA Youth League twice in their stellar run that consisted of personnel, including Tammy, Mason, Reese, and Mark Guehi. So people that had established themselves and had injected in their veins that winning mentality that they would that is needed to break through the club. So it's not the same kind of stance. Now you can't take people, players making the breakthrough for granted, especially considering that they barely escaped relegation in the last day of the season. They needed the help from the first team senior. I may sound a bit harsh, but I don't want to see stuff like we shouldn't sign this kind of player because let's say X player from the academy will have his pathway blocked. It's not a narrative. Everyone should deserve his place in the first team, and I mentioned this because in the discussion of outgoings, I feel that many players are fearful that they may leave. So players like Louis Colville or even Armando Broyes, my compatriot, they can also leave. Now, this is ultimately, I think it also falls to the players' passions. I feel that they aren't passionate enough, like Chalobah was, who got loaned at Huddersfield that before even at Lorient, so it was outside England, and he still made the breakthrough. So they have the kind of impatience, which partly is excused because they need to have guarantees about their futures. But the thing is that you need to be passionate to work hard to break through a club that has maximal ambitions. And even about Broja, for example, who could be a potential outgoing due to him joining the team later for preseason and stuff. So I feel disappointed to see him being so keen, if the reports are true always, because I can't take everything with a high degree of certainty, that he wants to go to West Ham. Now, it's not something that he is in a rush to decide. He has a 4-year contract. He's only 20 and also has shown his potential for both national team and on loan at Southampton, he had good glimpses. But I feel that for him specifically, it would be better to send him on loan at a club that knows how to nurture some possession-based features to him. I really want to see him play in a system that is very sophisticated, for example, like Brighton's, and then he could make a decision. But you can't really expect to break through in the Premier League environment, a club with maximal ambitions, just by a loan and a short purple patch, with all due respect, that he had at Southampton. So this is something that the young players are being too impatient, in my opinion, because the territory is there, and the manager is somebody that has favored players when they have deserved it. Chalobah involvement in the team came against the predictions of many fans. So I don't really get why young players should rush. They should, I think, keep the kind of composure in these kind of situations in order to make sure they impress. But what I'm disappointed with, and what could lead to our outgoings, is the lack of involvement in the preseason tour. Maybe I have missed something of Harvey Vale and Charlie Webster. I think they could at least have been part of the 25-man squad that we have had to make in order to avoid being outgoing. So what do you think of the situation, and how do you connect the stance of the current young players that have been regarded as the next talents by our fan base, with a possible departure for them or a possible breakthrough in the current team?
Yeah. My stance on this is probably going to be different than a lot of Chelsea fans. But, if we have this promising player that's supposedly such a great talent, then why what's there to worry about? If they're good enough, they're good enough. It's really is quite simply, that's how it goes. If this young player is good enough to have a role in the squad, then they will. If they're not, they won't. And I think that this notion that we start to see all the time now is that these younger players that are coming through the academy, They're obviously talented players, and there's no disputing that. But the thing for me about it is this: you can't just as an academy player come in and get a few first team appearances and then I'll go on a one loan and be 19, 20 years old and start demanding, wow, if you don't start playing me now, I want to leave. Well, okay, then there's the door. This is how you're at a European super club, and there are functionally zero European super clubs that are giving a large starting role to an academy player every single off season. That's just not how it works. Maybe at best Bayern Munich, but they're in a totally different set of circumstances than a Chelsea or a City or a Real Madrid or a PSG.
They are a monopoly there.
Exactly. We're not talking about clubs that are using academy development as a way to not only sustain revenue, but to sustain in the meantime some form of, starting 11 quality player. If you want to watch nothing but academy grads break through and be in the 11, then I recommend you go support clubs such as like Southampton, because that's a big thing that they do is develop talent and sell it off for high prices. Liverpool made a good amount of fortune off of that in terms of winning trophies from buying Mane and Van Dijk from Southampton. So that what I'm saying might be very inflammatory for a lot of people because the youth has really become a big focus for the fan base and since basically the Lampard appointment. And I think that really, though, although Lampard did very well with some of the youth, he also failed with others. And I think that that's an entirely different conversation about kind of the Tomori fallout there. But, I think that the bottom line is, it doesn't really matter which players you're talking about, whether it's Colwell or whether it's Harvey Vale or whether it's Ian Motson, whoever it is. I just think in general, too much of this is starting to evolve in the fan base where players want a role, and these fans are just more than willing to drop everything and just be on the side of the academy players simply because they came from the academy. That's the real reason why people are behind them is because of where they come from. And I get it. It's great to have somebody who's gone through the ranks at your own club to come up and then be in the squad. It's a great thing. And I'd love to see more people do it. But the reality is it just doesn't work this way very often. And we need to realize that as fans that if as a super club that wants to compete and challenge and be up there with the best clubs every year, inherently you're not going to be giving starting roles or massive roles to players with no top flight experience. That's just the way it works. I mean, and if that upsets you, then there are other clubs that have philosophies that are more in line with basically pumping the youth through every off season and getting more in. There are clubs that do that, and that maybe is something that fits your interests more. Because it's just because it happened with Mountain James doesn't mean it's going to happen with everybody. And the reason I say this is because I've been around long enough as a Chelsea fan to remember all of these prospects, everybody, even other outlets that are not even Chelsea based would talk about these prospects as the next best thing, some of the most promising talents in Europe. And I have watched plenty of them be billed as such and never turn out to be anything. And I can give you just a few examples now. McCachran was billed to be one of the best center mids that we've ever had in the academy.
In Asia.
I think he maybe is somewhere in like the lower levels of English football at this point of league football. There was, I can't remember, but you've got him, you've got Gail Kakuta, you've got Musanda. I mean, you've got Izzy Brown, you've got Dominique Solanke. And there are so many examples of these next best thing prospects from the academy that turn out to be absolutely nothing. So that's kind of where I draw the line, that we can't just, they're young and they want to have playing minutes. Well, okay, go out on loan and develop that way because you're not ready for this role yet at this level. And that's okay. It's okay to be 19 years old and not at the talent or maturity ready to handle a starting 11 role for a super club. That's okay. So I just think that's where I'm at with this. We're getting players blocked and who's in the tour, who's not. If these players are good enough, they will get integrated sooner or later. And if they don't want to wait for that chance and if they basically don't want to prove their worth before getting their chance, as a more full-time player. Basically, if they don't want to point to any body of work in the top flight level before they start making more demands, then maybe it's best that we move those kinds of players on, because there's really no meritocracy being established there if we're just going to give minutes and chances and roles to every young player that demands it. That's not setting a meritocracy. And when you don't set a meritocracy from a manager standpoint with a squad, you're basically going to have player power and disruption within the squad, because you've got essentially players that may not deserve to be playing as much as others getting the minutes just simply because they're using their demands to leave as a basically a tool to manipulate the club into keeping them around and giving them what they want. And I don't think that's really what we should do. So if some of these young guys are really upset by this and don't like that transfer targets are being linked in the positions that they play, then they need to probably go on loan and prove themselves, or they need to recognize that maybe this is not for them and move on and play elsewhere with their career, because it is their career. I don't hold it against any player that leaves Chelsea. It's their career. They should be able to do what they want with it.
Yeah, but there is a kind of two situation that stem from the discussion that we may have. I have more or less the same stance as you. So if they are around and they aren't good enough, they won't have an impact in the team whatsoever. So they just will fulfill people's demands and say that they are world beaters, and then they just live on illusions.
And that's kind of what really, I mean, and this isn't against, if people, there are plenty of youth football fans out there, and I coach youth football, so it's not like I don't have any affiliation for it, but I just think there's so many people that want to think that talent at a 19, 20-year-old kid, they think everything is a direct correlation, right? Well, if he's really talented at 20 years old, it's only going to be a linear path, as far as his development upwards. They just think it's all linearity. They think it's all one direction, and it's not. Player development, some players develop really, really quickly and get to their talent level, basically is by 19 years old, and then plateau and don't increase their talent. They don't increase ability. There are other players that take, they might not start hitting their real ability until 23, 24, 25. And then they have a short window of maybe 3 to 5 years where they're a very good player. And there are other players that, by 19 hit a very good talent ceiling, and then maybe go up a little bit and then down and then take a later step. There's so many ways in which development actually happens with a player that I think this notion that, well, if they're good now at 19, they're only going to continue every single season to get better. It's just not how it works in reality. It never works this way in reality. There are talents that you can't miss on, but there are plenty of talents that you will miss, and more players will not succeed at this club from the academy than they will. More players are not going to succeed than they will succeed, and that's just the way. That's just the way most clubs work. I mean, regardless of status in European football. Sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent there, but I think that it, in my opinion at least, it very well sums up the youth discussion, because it's talking about it really from a not just, well, we're not talking granular about, will Levi Colwell have a role in the team. We're talking more generally to recognize in a general sense this is the way things work, and then you can kind of take what I just said and apply it to every player that you might care about, and then think about that developmental pathway and if they're ready for this role, if they should demand these kinds of things or not. I'll leave that up for you, but that's at least my thinking on the matter, is that you have to consider the talent of the players, but you need to recognize that it's not a linear pathway and there are no guarantees. You are quite literally rolling the dice. And I don't think that's what a European super club should be doing every offseason.
Yeah, that's the same point. And the fact that you said about the process of development and how it occurs regarding the young players is also a process of trying to keep them down to earth, because some people take it for granted, as I said. And you see, for example, with Callum Hudson-Odoi, I used to watch a lot of academy games when it was a past generation, so the generation of 5 years ago. But that generation was stellar. As I said, they won 7 out of 7 trophies under Jody Morris in 2 years. So there was something that was really distinguished, and still inside that personnel you had elements that weren't good enough, and people still used to hide them. So I don't want to be, let's say, too one-sided in my way of expressing my opinion, because I have been and still am, in a sense of showing the love for the club in every part of its institution, and one of part is the academy. And I know the work that it has been put. I'm not against the principle of integrating players that should come through.
And I'm not against it either.
They have to deserve it. It's not something that you take for granted. And the thing is that people are becoming irrational and think it's the same academy personnel when everything has changed. Now you have a time period when you are very productive. It's like in sort of agriculture. So you in one season your crops grow very quickly and in a considerable measure, and now you don't have the same productivity anymore because of a number of reasons. So I don't think that you can take it always for granted that the academy chains were very productive in 2017 and will always be this way. So this is what I don't really get. And what I hate is lowering the standards just to accommodate academy guys, which is so. This is why I don't think that their departures would have, generally speaking, as you said, I'm not mentioning names, but generally speaking, departure of names that aren't good enough won't have any negative significant impact in the team, because there is a reason why they don't play. We don't have a stubborn manager who isn't willing. I think they are unfair with Tuchel when they say that he hasn't integrated them much, because I can't call integration playing the 38th game of the season against Watford. It wouldn't do anything good for them. Tuchel played Xavier Simmons, Harvey Vale, and Judson Sabel in a League Cup quarter-final West London derby, and people tend to ignore that. It's not you can't ignore, because it's a cup knockout game, and he trusted them, and they are still very young. So the thing is that I feel disappointed, and also it's another case of what disappoints me. It's about Callum Hudson-Odoi specifically, because you mentioned that kind of direction that the players have. He was exceptional in the academy. He was really exceptional in terms of pace and also acceleration and shooting. And now he has lost his ability to take people on, and also his shooting accuracy is too disappointing. But on one case you have dribblers, so dribbling becomes difficult due to the increased level of fullbacks you have to come against when you make the transition from academy teams to the first team. But shooting is an independent feature, and before, his shooting was both precise and with the right amount of power. Now his shoots are 90% of the time central and without troubling the opposite keeper a bit. So that's a kind of case when you have to work with a player psychologically as well, because it's another negative impact that this kind of blindly support Cobham graduates put pressure, because the players have social media and see things, and then they really have a negative impact without noticing, due to making them sort of leave that down-to-earth stance. So that's my take on it. I hope that many graduates will come through, but only they deserve it, and that's all.
Interesting player to. I was going to say an interesting player to kind of go off of this specifically is, because it's a position that we don't really have anybody other than Kai Havertz is at striker, center forward. Broja was left out of the squad to go on preseason. Do you think this is because Tuchel is not interested? Do you think it's because Broja might be moving on? Do you think that there's some other reason? Why do you think that Broja maybe was left out? Because out of all of our most, our young, kind of quote unquote youngsters that are coming through or potentially coming through, I thought Broja was the most likely, given the fact that there is little to no competition to at least get one of the three striker places that we need to have in this squad.
Yeah, I want to be a bit specific here because he's my compatriot, and it's a pleasure to see an Albanian playing for Chelsea first and foremost. And even though I was against signing Llzona at the time due to Reece being really capable of breaking through, but in terms of Broja, it's another kind of situation because he has shown himself in English territory that he has talent, has potential, but it's another case. If so, I didn't really expect him to miss the first days of preseason because when you are young and you miss the first days of preseason, it either means that you are prepared to make a move, or it means that you aren't determined enough to convince the manager to that you are the one that he should really count on in terms of the young profile. So that's a it's surprising for me, but I don't really want to look much on it in the condition that he is expected to join the club next week. So if he joins and he impresses, it's fine. But if he leaves, then there may be many scenarios that can stem from it. So one of them is if he leaves for West Ham, how will it impact our Rice deal, and will we put a buyback clause on him? Ideally speaking, I don't feel he is ready to play for Chelsea in this moment. So people are getting carried away, I think, due to the fact that we don't have clinical strikers and really put too much hope on a player that is coming from academy. But even at Southampton, I don't want to sound cynical, but he wasn't as convincing as to say that, yes, this is a product that we have to make. For me, ideally, he needs another more sophisticated loan. So that's my point on the situation. And I think that if he leaves, I feel that it's a case of him being not passionate enough to impress. And I hope that if he leaves, we put a buyback clause on him because he has a potential. But as it stands, I don't feel he is ready for Chelsea. So ideally, I'd like to see him in another long deal and in a team that can really bring him to prominence in terms of what he can do and how he can evolve his potential in a more possession-based side. So that's my point.
Yeah, I think, what I would say with Broja is I think that was the one I was expecting the most to have a chance this offseason to prove his value and maybe get that third striker role. We haven't even really been linked with any strikers, so maybe he could even get that second striker role. But that's not to say that things won't change. I don't know why. I'm not going to pretend to know the reason why he's not in the squad for this tour. But I do want to say that, if we get a substantial offer, like 30 to 40 million euro bid for Broja, I think it will be accepted. And I think it'll be accepted because you got to look at, he has one season in the Premier League. I don't even think that he was a double-digit goal scorer. So to be able to get that kind of fee for a player is a pretty good deal, given the amount of experience that he has to fall back on. I think I'm with you as well. I think for what's best with his development, given his age and career stage, it's not to come to Chelsea and be the third striker on the bench or, second striker on the bench. So the third overall striker in the pecking order. It really is to get consistent minutes. And he got a lot of that last season at Southampton. He did pretty well. And then from there, it kind of slowed off there for a little bit. And I just have to say, I think that, if he's going to continue, it's going to be hopefully another Premier League loan, and then gets him, a little bit more minutes than he got last season. I think it's going to be best for his overall development. And then maybe that's when we reassess next year. Do we really? I think that would give us enough. If we have 2 seasons of him being a Premier League player, and that's enough for probably us to begin to make an evaluation of, do we keep him or do we sell him? I think that would give us enough. But right now, I don't know if we have enough. And I think that this is a player, I think and this is much more speaking to the fact of, given that there's really only just Kai Havertz, that's it. I think it'd be silly to sell him this season if we don't at least try to explore the option of a loan. And if there are no loans and the player does not want to be on the bench, then I think that's when I think we would consider the sale at that point. But as far as why he's not in the squad, it is quite puzzling. And if I have, like I said, I don't know, but if I had to give my best guess, it's probably because he's wanting more than we can offer as far as his role in the squad for right now.
Yeah, that's more or less my point. And I said that, these are things that have to be clarified further down the line. He is confirmed that he will join the team. So next week, I think, or in the middle of their tour in America. So it's not the right moment to make assumptions now. We should get clarified in the next days or so.
Yep.
So that was another episode of Frankly Saturdays. I thank everybody for the support. Hopefully we'll grow even more with the coming weeks and hopefully we'll have transfers done by our next episode next week, because we are really looking forward to them. Again, thanks a lot. I want to thank Trev for the participation and helping me. It's a massive pleasure really to be here and to discuss about Chelsea. Sometimes it's a bit difficult, as I said, because we aren't in mid-season to have a wide range of topics. So we have to focus on transfers and things that have to do with the activity of a player staying or leaving and things like that. But always a pleasure to talk and debate constructively about the club, and it's a massive pleasure for knowing Trev as a person and then as a fellow Chelsea fan. So thanks a lot for the participation. Again, please like, subscribe to the channel, in order not to miss any new video of our show and also of the other shows of the channel. So thanks again. We'll be back. So the same time, same day next week with other topics of discussion, and hope you will be back as well. So bye and cheers.
Thanks again.
Thanks.